Hey y'all. So I started my YouTube channel a few months ago. I haven't really publicized it. It's just something that I created just for fun. I wanted to just share my travels and just film projects that I'm working on. But this year, 2025, I really want to grow closer with God. So these last couple of months, I just felt God telling me to just share more of my faith, which I feel like I don't really do enough of. So this particular vlog, I just want to share my testimony about how I was introduced to New Age spirituality and how God brought me out of it. So let's start from the beginning. I'm going to try to keep it under 15-20 minutes, but if it goes longer, I'm just going to split this video up into different parts because I know y'all have a short attention span. But so basically I just start from my, just from the beginning, like my upbringing. So most people that know me, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. That's where I was born. I lived in Jackson until I was about 12, and then my parents moved us to Madison, Mississippi, which most people in Jackson think people in Madison, like, we're the bougie people, which I'm not bougie at all. So I grew up in a Christian household. My dad, he took us to church, every Sunday. We would go to Sunday school. We would go to day church. He would take us to night church. We went to Bible study on Wednesday nights. He would take us to vacation Bible school. And then on top of that, he would also do, every night, he would have devotions with us. So we were, just churched out. He would just take us to church all the time. I remember this time when I was, I think I was, 4 or 5 years old. And I was sitting on my dad's lap, and he was saying something about God, Jesus. And I was like, well, God is not real. I remember I said, God is not real. And then my dad, he pushed me off his knee. He was like, don't you ever say that again. Don't ever say God isn't real. And I remember, I was so young, but I remember it just kind of left this fear inside of me. So I was kind of like, well, I just won't question it anymore. God is real. So anyway, just, throughout high school, middle school, I just, I would go to church every Sunday with my family, Easter, I was in church. And then even when I went off to college, I went to Ole Miss for undergrad. And while I was at Ole Miss, just typical college student, Ole Miss is a party school. So I got caught up in just going to parties, drinking, just typical college student. But I still, they had a church on campus, so I would still go to church, So anyway, after I finished undergrad, I ended up going to the University of Memphis for grad school. And it was the same thing. I found a church. I joined New Direction Church in Memphis. And I really loved it. I met a really good group of friends there. I was involved in different ministries. I went to Bible study. I went to church every Sunday. So I was really active in the church. So after I finished grad school, I moved back to Mississippi, and I started working at Tougaloo College. That was my first job at a grad school. I was an academic success. No, I was a first-year seminar instructor. So I taught, those classes that freshmen have to take, those seminar classes. I taught those classes, and I was also an advisor. So the same thing, while I went back home, I was, still going to church every Sunday, going to Bible study. And just working. I was doing a 9-to-5 thing. So I did that for about close to 2 years. And then I just kind of got burned out. I was I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, going to work every day, going to church. I just felt just kind of bored with life. I was man, I kind of just tapped out. So after, about 2 years, I quit my job at Tougaloo, and I moved to Columbia, South Carolina. My older brother, he was living there. He was doing his medical school residency. So I was like, can I come stay with you for, a month or so? He was like, yeah, that's cool. And I ended up staying for a whole year. I feel bad looking back now. Like, I'm just moving to his place, like taking over his little 2-bedroom apartment. And my twin sister, Ashley, she also moved to Columbia. Because, you know, wherever I move, she got to move too. So, while I was in South Carolina, I kind of just, I think I did go to church a little bit, but I kind of just started like straying away from church, you know. And while I was in South Carolina, I was broke, like, because when I had quit my job when I left Mississippi. So when I got to Columbia, I didn't have any source of income, but I ended up finding a job at a call center. So I was working at a call center, and then I got a non-paid internship at a media company. It was like a production company. So I got a chance to learn, like, just how to work behind the cameras. I got a chance to help out with like different events. It was like exciting because I've always been into like film and just the production. So while I was doing the internship, I got introduced to kind of like, you know, new age. So the person that I was interning for, she kind of like introduced me to like just kind of like new age books, like the Four Agreements, the Kabbalion, things like that. So I kind of just started reading the books, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. You know, this is an interesting take on life and, you know, the afterlife. So I just, you know, just started reading more on like, you know, just learning more about like just new age practices. I think I got into crystals. I started buying crystals and learning about just what the meanings behind different crystals, like there, you know, like the rose quartz is about, you know, represents love, and the clear quartz represents, I forgot what it represents, but anyway, each crystal kind of represents like different, it has a different significance. So yeah, I started getting more into like, you know, new age books, crystals. I started doing yoga, and I ended up going to this center. It's a spiritual center in Croghan, South Carolina. It was called the Metaside Center. So the Metaside Center is just like, it's like this huge temple in like the middle of nowhere. It's actually really beautiful. Like, it's surrounded by like a bunch of land. There's gardens, animals, lots of like plants. And then inside of the temple, the guy that, and I probably shouldn't say his name, but it was a guy named Swami. He was like the guru, this black guy. He was the guru, and he was like the leader of the temple. So there was like this huge like meditation room where, you know, you could do like yoga, kundalini, that type of stuff. And he also had like this huge library, like just full of like new age books. So me and my sister ended up staying there at the temple for like a week. And he was kind of like, you know, just under his leadership, like he just kind of talked about like spiritual things, like the afterlife and how we are, you know, what the true meaning of life is. Like, you know, we control our life. It's based on what our thoughts will create our reality. So anyway, we ended up staying a week at this temple. Like, we would get up early in the morning and do like meditation, yoga. We would do kundalini in the middle of the day. We would go outside in the garden, get some sunshine, and I just felt like, wow, this is like just so neat. You know what I'm saying? This is like a new perspective of life that I'm taking on, and I felt like, wow, this, you know, I'm on the right path for life or whatever. And he introduced me to these books. This guy, not a book, but this guy named Paramahansa Yogananda. So Paramahansa Yogananda, he's an Indian monk, yogi, and an Indian monk and yogi. And he actually has, I'm looking at my notes. Like, I wrote some notes down so I can stay on topic. So he's an Indian monk and yogi. He teaches about Christ consciousness and Kriya yoga and God realization, and how, you know, everything is just Christ is just like, Jesus Christ is like a consciousness. Like they refer to Jesus, it's like a state of consciousness. Like, oh, I have this state of Christ consciousness. So I just started like, reading some of his books. I actually bought some of his books. It was The Yoga of Jesus was one of them. So it's like the book incorporated Jesus, but it mixed in like Hindu practices, which now I know is false doctrine. And I also bought another book. It was called The Second Coming of Christ, The Resurrection of Christ Within. So everything about Jesus was like something that's within you. It's not like an actual person. And Paramahansa Yogananda, he started these self-realization temples. There's a temple in Charlotte. I know there's one in Atlanta, and there's actually one in LA. So anyway, that's how I got connected to Paramahansa Yogananda's teaching. The thing about New Age spirituality, like it's continuous. Like you always picking up new knowledge. It's always more to learn. It's like this rabbit hole of different like doctrines and different practices. So anyway, that was South Carolina. I left South Carolina and I ended up moving to Charlotte. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I got a job back in my field. I was working at Johnson C. Smith University. It's at HBCU in Charlotte. So while I was there, I wasn't going to church anymore. I was just kind of just reading like my New Age books, the Paramahansa Yogananda books, and just doing my yoga. And I would like even go outside and go outside in nature. And I feel like, well, this is my time with God, just going out to nature. So while I was in Charlotte, I wanted to go visit one of the self-realization temples. So I went to the self-realization temple in Charlotte, and it was kind of like a weird experience. Like the sermons that they taught was based off of the books. The teachers of Paramahansa Yogananda, they did speak about Jesus, but in their teachings, they don't consider Jesus the only Messiah. Like they believe like he was one of many Messiahs that came back throughout our lifetime. So when I went into the temple, they were teaching from the Paramahansa Yogananda's books. And there was this, instead of doing like traditional like church hymns, like traditional church music, they would do like chanting, which I thought, to me, it just kind of felt weird. Like we just did like these chants like over and over again, and I just, it was just like a weird experience for me. And then they also had this big altar in the front of the room, and on the altar they had like just different symbols, and they had pictures. They had a picture of Jesus, and then the pictures of other messiahs, like Indian messiahs, and just other people throughout throughout our lifetime. So after I left the self-realization temple, I was just like, well, I really don't want to go back. All right, y'all, I'm back. So my battery ended up dying on my camera. So I'm gonna pick up where I left off. So so I was in Charlotte. I went to the self-realization temple, and I didn't really have a good experience. I didn't feel like I wanted to go back. Like I just didn't like the energy of the place. So I went back to just, the same thing, like just continuing to do more yoga, buying more crystals, reading more New Age books. Like I started reading the 48 Laws of Power, the Bhagavad Gita, those type of things. And I even wrote, at that time I was getting more into writing, and I wrote my first script. It was I wrote a 30-page script. It was a dramedy series, and I wrote a pilot episode for a dramedy series, and it was called Rose Quartz, like the crystal. So it was like a New Age dramedy, like rom-com type script. So yeah, I was just kind of getting just more indoctrinated into like just the books and that type of stuff. So anyway, I ended up moving after I left Charlotte, I ended up moving to Atlanta. So I moved again, And at that time, it was the same thing. I still wasn't really going to church. I was still just, my church was just reading my spiritual books. I still prayed. I was doing my yoga, and I still, I was still praying. So I still believed in God, but I was kind of more, I consider myself just more spiritual. Like if somebody asked me, like, I stopped saying I was a Christian. I would just say, oh, I'm just a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, like that. So somehow I was introduced to this church. It was a church in Atlanta. It was a New Thought church. So it was, New Thought is a little bit different from New Age, but they are kind of similar. So with New Thought churches, they do recognize Jesus, but they also incorporate like elements of Hinduism, like they believe in reincarnation, and that we control our thoughts. God is within us. We are collaborators with God to create the life that we want. And the church, I really, I never went to the church in person. I'm not gonna say the name of it, but I really liked it because it was a black church. It was like traditional black gospel music, but I like that they incorporated the spiritual element as far as like, spirituality, meditation, the reincarnation aspect of it. Because it's like with New Thought, it makes you feel like you don't have any consequences for your actions. Like, they didn't believe in, heaven. They don't believe in heaven and hell. It's like hell and heaven is like a state of mind. You're gonna get reincarnated, so you'll get a chance to continue. You continue to come back to earth until you become the greatest version of yourself. So I just love that message. It just made me feel like, well, I still have forever to get it together, which now I know is false doctrine. So anyway, after that, so I was, back in Atlanta for about close to 4 years. And after I left Atlanta, I ended up moving to California because I was like, I move around a lot. So I was like, let me, I want to move. I was working remotely. So I was like, let me, just try a new state. So I ended up I moved to San Diego first. I was in San Diego for 10 months. One of my friends lived there. So I lived with her for the first 2 months. And then after those 2 months were over, I got my own place in San Diego. And it was still the same thing. Like, I think I only went to church like one time while I was there. And that was with my friend. But after, she moved back. She moved back to Mississippi. And it was just, just me there. And I didn't really, I didn't go to church. I was just doing like the New Thought, reading my books, my New Thought books. But that was it. I still just consider myself more like just a spiritual person. So after 10 months in San Diego, I moved to LA. And I was living in Inglewood when I first moved to LA. And I would go to a Starbucks up the street from where I lived, and I would just go there and like work on like scripts and different film projects. So one day I was in Starbucks and I was working on a feature screenplay, and there was this lady. She was sitting across, this black lady. She was sitting across from me, and she was like, "Hey," she went, "Are you?" She was like, "Are you a writer?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm a screenwriter." She said, "Okay, well, I am too." And she was like, "My church has a screenwriting group." And then she was kind of like, she said, "Are you a Christian? Do you go to church?" And I kind of paused, and I was like, yeah. I said, I believe in God. I said, "Yeah, I believe in God." And I was like, I said, "Well, what church do you go to?" And she said, "Well, I go to Faithful Central. It's a church in Inglewood." I was like, "Okay." So she gave me her card, and she said, "Well, if I ever wanted to go to church, give her a call or text her." So I said, "Okay." So I went home, and I ended up looking up the church online, and I was like, "Okay." The preacher, he was young. He was like around my age. It was like a black church, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll go check it out." So I think I waited about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I reached out to the lady, and I was like, "Hey," I said, "Well, I would like to go to church. And, I'm going to church this Sunday." So she's like, "Okay, sure." So we kind of like, I went to church, and I really liked it. It reminded me of the church that I went to when I lived in Memphis. Like, it was like, you know, traditional black gospel music. I enjoyed the sermon. All the people were nice. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I was like, man, I missed this. Because I hadn't been to church in so long. So it was just nice just being in a place of worship again. Just interacting with other people. So, yeah, so after that, I continued going to the church like regularly, because the church, it was only like 5 minutes from where I lived in Inglewood. So I was like, okay, the church is close to where I stay, you know, so I just, you know, kept going continuously. But the name of the church is Faithful Central Bible Church. So they specifically taught from the Bible. They didn't believe in anything outside of the Bible. So I kind of, in the back of my head, I was kind of like, well, you know, I kind of still had like the little spiritual thing going on. Like, I still kind of I had that connection to, like, you know, New Age, and I still believed in, you know, like, just, you know, I still believe in the New Age ideology. So, you know, I was going to the church for a couple of months, and I ended up, some of my close friends already know this, but I ended up getting wrongfully terminated from my job in California. So I ended up having to move back to Atlanta. I moved back to Atlanta for 5 months. I left my car in California. And that was just like a really difficult time for me. Like, I was, you know, losing my job. It really messed up my finances. I was depressed. It just really affected my mental state. So I was just like, all over the place, just really down. But I eventually ended up getting another job. But actually was offered 2 full-time, completely remote jobs. So I was just like rebuilding my money, rebuilding my savings. And while I was in Atlanta, I started going to church with my sister. My sister was going to Change Church, and I believe it's in Duluth. So I would go with her to church, you know, some Sundays. And then finally, after about 5 months, my sister was like, okay, it's time for you to go. You know, you've been at my place 5 months. So I was kind of like, you know, I kind of felt like uncertain. I was like, should I go back to California? You know, it's so expensive out there. And I was like, should I just, you know, ship my car back and just be done with it? But I felt like, you know, I was only in LA 8-9 months. So I was like, you know, I felt like it was still some things that I wanted to do, you know, in LA. So I did end up moving back. I left LA March. Was it March? I don't know the exact date, but I left, like, I think it was March 2024, and I moved back to LA in July, this past July 2024. All right, so yeah, I moved back to LA, and then I don't know, for some reason I moved into my apartment. I have a nice apartment in LA. I was getting, you know, settled again. I'm trying to go out, like, join different organizations, like, network with people. But I just felt, for some reason, this deep depression came over me. I just felt like I was just so depressed. I was like, man, what's wrong? You know, why am I feeling depressed? You know, I'm back in California. I have, you know, my money. I've rebuilt my money. You know, I have a nice place, and I just felt like really, really depressed, and I just couldn't shake it. And I was telling my sister, I said, you know, I'm feeling depressed. She's like, why are you depressed? You know, you back in California. You know, you got a job. You making good money. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And I just kind of felt like, you know, start questioning my purpose again. Like, you know, I'm trying to find my purpose. You know, I feel like I don't know where I fit in life. You know, I kind of just felt like, you know, this, like I said, this somber, dark feeling around me. So one day, I was just on YouTube, like, looking at different videos, and this video came up of these 3 sisters, these 3 black women. They were sisters. They were psychics. But they considered themselves Christian psychics, and they were based in San Diego. And then I was just watching an interview of them, and they were just people were saying they were like really, their predictions were like spot on. They can like tell you anything about your personal life, and it was accurate. the sisters that the psychics talked about how they actually like spoke to Jesus and they spoke to the devil. And I was just kind of intrigued. I was like, wow. I said, well, these, Black women, they're psychics, but they're also Christian. And I was like, I think I'm going to reach out to them. Because I just feel like I feel lost. I don't feel like I have a purpose. I just, I needed to talk to somebody. So I ended up going to their website and I was looking at their prices. And I was trying to decide, I was like, well, I think I'm going to like do like a phone. I was trying to decide if I was going to do like a phone session or like a Zoom session with the psychics. So anyway, I just kind of wrote down their information and I just made a note to like, reach out later in the week. So, like I think a day later, I was on YouTube again, and the thumbnail for the Breakfast Club, it was like an episode for the Breakfast Club, came through. It was on my feed, and I saw that they were interviewing this pastor. Her name was Stephanie. I don't want to mispronounce her last name. I think it's Stephanie Okafor, and she's a preacher here in LA. She preaches at a church called One Church LA. It's like a extension of the Potter House. And at first when I saw the video clip, I was like, I'm not going to watch that. I don't want to watch a preacher, an interview of a preacher. But something inside of me told me just to watch the interview. So I watched the interview, and then she was just talking about how since the age of 9, she's always had like a supernatural connection with Jesus. Like she always felt like she experienced God supernaturally. Like it was always something like supernatural happening to her. And she was just, they were just continuing the interview. And then she brought up psychics. She was like, yeah, psychics are evil, even the ones that say they're Christian. And she was like, even though they might know certain things about you, that doesn't mean that it's right. She was like, in the spiritual realm, everything is known. Like, dark entities, demonic entities, they know everything. They already know everything about us in the spiritual realm. So it's nothing for a psychic to tell you like what you wore today or what you did a week ago or what your grandfather's favorite color was. So after I watched the interview, I was like, well, you know what? I just decided not to go through with reaching out to the psychics. Like I feel like God wanted me to hear that message. So after that, I just looked up Stephanie on YouTube and I just started watching like a lot of her sermons. And I really love the way she preaches. Like I've gone to church all of my life, but a lot of times, you go to church and like the sermons go in one ear and out the other. And she really she breaks the word down to where you can like really understand it. And she's, very funny, charismatic. She's not judgmental. So I really love the way that she delivered the word. So I was still feeling like a little depressed. So I was like, well, let me just do a 21-day fast. A 21-day fast. And I was like, I'm going to just cut out social media for 21 days, which I'm not on there that often anyway. And I was just going to just spend an hour a day, just reading sermons, reading my Bible, I was still reading my New Age books, like my New Age books. So I was just doing, 21 days doing that. So one day I was watching one of Pastor Stephanie's, I was on her YouTube channel, and she did a series called The Modernization of Witchcraft. And I'm actually going to put a link to that interview in the description. So she just talked about the modernization of witchcraft and how it's so common in today's society. And in one of her interview sessions, she interviewed this guy, and he was a former yoga instructor, and he also used to be involved in I think it's called ayahuasca. That's like when you drink like the shrooms, and that type of stuff. It's like a psychedelic type of experience, but he kind of just gave like a detailed overview of how he gave up yoga, how yoga was, it was demonic, it's witchcraft, how just New Age, spirituality, all of that was just witchcraft. And I just, I really took in the message. I was like, wow. I said, what I've been doing, is wrong. It goes against God. And I was one of those people who I've done yoga for so long. So, when people would say, oh, yoga, I've heard that yoga was witchcraft or it was, evil, but I was kind of like, what do y'all mean? It's just, it's just stretching, what's evil about yoga? But just hearing the interview and hearing the guy talk about the history behind yoga, like, yeah, it's stretching, but the different poses that you're doing, you're praising like these entities, these Hindu entities. So, it is witchcraft, because anything that goes against God is considered witchcraft. So I was like, wow, it was just very insightful. So I just started, listening to more and more of like Pastor Stephanie's sermons and just reading the Bible for myself and just like really taking in the word. So after that, I just, I threw away all of my new age books, my yoga books, my crystals, and even yoga. Like the last time I went to a yoga class was about maybe, I think 2 or 3 months ago. And interesting story. While I was on my way to the yoga class, I just started having like these really bad headaches. Like I had like a really bad dizzy spell. Like it was, it just kind of came out of nowhere. So I started feeling dizzy. And then when I made it to the yoga studio, it was a Black-owned yoga studio in Inglewood. As soon as I walked inside the door, they were like saging the room. So I went in, I did the yoga session, and it was fine. Like it was like I felt like it was very relaxing. It was like a what is it called? Zen flow. So it wasn't like an intense yoga class. It was like very like relaxing, like a Zen yoga type class. So after the class was over, I left. And then that night I remember I had like a really like a dark dream. Like nothing bad happened to me in the dream, but I remember it just felt like really dark. Like I'm not gonna go into detail about it, but it was just the dream. It just was a really dark dream. Like I just remember feeling like I'm ready to wake up. Something doesn't feel right. So so a couple of weeks later, that's when I watched this the Modernization of Witchcraft. The Modernization of Witchcraft interview that Pastor Stephanie did. So I was like, wow. So, I was kind of putting 2 and 2 together, like, dang, what I've been doing is witchcraft. And then the thing about it is when I was doing my 21-day fast, I was like reading the Bible, an hour a day. I was still reading my New Thought books. I was still incorporating yoga. So I was trying to incorporate, you can't incorporate like good and evil. And while I was, the point of me doing my fast was to grow closer to God and to find, my purpose. And I noticed that while I was during the fast, I still didn't feel that close with God. But after it was revealed to me that, New Thought, these New Thought books and yoga and all that was like, it goes against God. I was like, wow, that's why I haven't heard God's voices, because I've been like still like having my hands into the new age stuff. So yeah, so that was about, I think it's been about 2 months now since I've like completely just let go of new age completely. Like I threw away all of the New Thought books. I don't do yoga anymore. And the thing about yoga, if you just want to like stretch or something, there's mobility classes you can take. I started doing Pilates, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure. From my understanding, Pilates is is different from yoga. It's nothing to do with like under like any Hindu entities. You're not like honoring any entities, from my understanding. So if I'm speaking incorrectly, let me know if Pilates is affiliated with yoga. But from my understanding, it's not. But yeah, so it's been about 2 months since I've just completely let go of new age, New Thought practices. And I feel much better. Like I have more clarity about my life. And over the last decade, I've moved around. I've lived in so many states now. And I've been like on this journey, like trying to find purpose. Like, where do I fit in the world? What am I good at? And I'm kind of like, you know, my purpose was always in front of me. Like, you know, in one of Pastor Stephanie's sermons, she said that, you know, we're as humans, we get too caught up in like what our purpose is. And she said, you know, we don't really have a purpose. Like, we have gifts, we have things that we're good at, but ultimately all of us have our divine mission is just to like make disciples, like expand the kingdom of God, share the gospel. And that was my purpose all along, you know. So I went through this whole big journey of like leaving church and getting into New Age just to find myself right back to where I started, like my upbringing in the church, when my mission all along was just to like, you know, bring people to God. And that's why I wanted to like share this vlog, just to kind of, you know, just to share my testimony. And I'm not judging anybody. You know, I'm 2 months out of New Age. So I know that's something that if you're into New Age, I just encourage you to like really do your history, like, you know, really study what you're doing, what you're getting into. There's so many videos on YouTube now of people that former New Agers, people sharing their testimonies about how they came out of it and how it negatively influenced their life. Because the thing is, with a lot of, you know, yoga and crystals and everything, I've never experienced anything negative. Like, I've never had any supernatural encounters, but a lot of people have, and I'm glad I didn't get that deep into New Age where I did experience anything supernatural. But I just encourage people to just, you know, like I said, do your research. And, you know, like I said, I'm not judging anybody, you know, if you're uncertain about something, just seek God and pray for guidance in your life. But anyway, y'all, I know this ended up being a lot longer than what I thought. So this probably is going to be a 2-part video. But anyway, I just hope that this video blesses somebody. It inspires somebody. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below, or you can message me. And yeah, and if you feel inclined, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. But anyway, y'all, like I said, I hope this blesses somebody, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.